I got into a discussion the other day over the internet with someone on belt drives. And the discussion isn't really what this is about. I'll go over it real quickly, but he was saying if you had an increase in static pressure against the blower, it would draw more power and the driver pulley here would slip. Well, that isn't true. I'm going to reiterate that one again. It's all about how much air is being moved. Of course, if I put static pressure against this thing, it's going to move less air. So it's all about how much air it's moving. Right now, it's kind of wide open. There's maybe a little bit of restriction there. But this thing's probably going to draw a rated load on this motor. This is a 1/4 horse motor. But here's one of the interesting things about this. I thought I'd try to pass this on and see if I can make people understand it. See how loose this belt is? I can almost touch these together. Now, is that the right tension for that belt? Of course not. It's ridiculous. It's way too low. Okay, when I fire this thing up, I want you to watch what happens to that belt. Okay, now you can see how loose it is here, but it's actually quite tight there. Now, it's slipping a little bit right now, but what is happening with a V-belt, what a lot of people don't understand about how these things work, is the V-belt is capable of transferring a lot more power than you'd ever think because it's a self-tightening belt to a certain extent. You notice that this side here got fairly straight, not real straight, but fairly straight. Okay, because it's trying to pull this wheel. Well, when this pulley starts to rotate, that belt is going to suck down because it's a V shape that it's going into. And so that belt is going to self-tighten as it starts to drive. Because this thing is working against it, and you see, like that, now it'll slip, you know, well, yeah, it'll slip because it is really loose. But what I'm saying is, see how that's a self-tightening? That's what those belts do. This belt here, this is a 1/4 horse motor, so it's pretty small. This is a 4L belt. That means it's fractional horsepower. But if it were an A belt, which is for multiple horsepower applications, it would work the same. The only thing about the A belt is it's stronger. This one's actually glued together. The ends are glued together. But the A belts are not. But what I was trying to get to is that on a fractional application, that belt does not have to be very tight. Now this is too loose, certainly. And it does slip some. But just understand that on these small motors like this, first thing you don't want, this is what you don't want. You don't want that. That's going to take out this bearing. It's just a bushing, not known for being well lubricated. This one doesn't even have lubrication on it, but it's going to take out that bearing. So you want it actually quite a bit more loose. Not this much. But I wanted to show you something. I've got a meter on this thing, and let's see what the amp draw is with this thing operating. Loose as a goose. Okay. Now we're operating at 4.46 amps, 47. Okay? With it that loose, Now if I tighten this belt, now you can hear it moving a little more air. Okay, it's drawing 4.8 amps now. Not much difference, is there? It was actually drawing quite a bit of amperage, just as loose as a goose. But because the V-belt tends to self-tighten on the driven side, where it's actually pulling on that pulley, they do not need to be terribly tight. Just a little on how these belts work. I've seen these belts, especially A belts or B belts, which are the multiple horsepower belts. I've seen them take tremendous loads that you would never think something that small could take that much load, and yet it does. So let's get this thing tightened about where it should be. Okay, right now I've still got it loose as a goose here. Okay, and we're drawing 4.75 amps. That's probably about as high as it needs to be. You can go a little bit tighter on it, and I don't think it'll hurt because it really is loose. We're just drawing just a little bit more. Put it up here. Pretty much drawn about the same. I think that's probably about it. But here again, when you look at this belt, it's pretty loose. Now you'd never do an automotive V-belt or something like that loose. But they're a different application. This belt is best put on like that. And remember, the pulley and drive system used with a V-belt is kind of self-tightening, up to a point. Okay, that's it on the V-drive.